What's up, everyone? Welcome back for a new edition of Collider Forces, a special edition for many a reason. Liv Hewson, the creator of Collider Forces, is back.
Stop.
So that also makes you our very first second timer on the show.
Cool.
Yeah, which is very exciting. And you are also, I'm a little embarrassed to admit this, but you're also going to be the very first person to christen the official Collider Forces Dice Tower.
I'm thrilled. I'm honored.
We talked about this 2 years ago, though, and it took me all this time to buy, because I was like putting that little handy doodle that I made over the other one, but I don't know. Eventually,
I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, there's a wonderful company on Etsy who prints these, and they did a wonderful job yet again. So here we are, and you're going to be the first one to use it today. So that is where we begin. I've got a whole new set of questions for you.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Remind me, I just tossed it down the
back,
the
and
chimney.
it goes into the grass. Number 2. Okay. Oh, number 2 is an easy one. Maybe not, actually. This one's TV guest spot.
Okay.
You could guest star in the TV show of your choice. What show would you pick and why?
AMC's Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, good choice.
If they need someone to play Lestat in his 20s, I will do it. I will happily do it. Please give me a call.
I'm a big believer that is one of the very best shows out there right now.
That whole cast is incredible. That show's so fabulous. It's one of my favorite things airing right now.
You came ready to answer that question.
That is exactly the one.
Let's see how you fare with the other ones.
Okay.
Second roll in the tower out of 3. All right, number 6. I want you to get a Yellowjackets one. This one is set vice. What is your on-set vice? The thing, maybe a piece of food, a drink, or even an activity that you turn to that'll help you power through a tough day on set.
I'm almost like bashful to admit this, but lately it is Diet Coke. And like I was never like a soft drink, like soda person ever. Like my mom was a big like whole food, like very like Carib type of mom. So we never had it growing up. And to be honest, it actually started on For Worse, filming For Worse, me and Brianna and Lily, just like in the middle of strange night shoot loopiness, made a running joke out of like how much we were relying on having a Diet Coke to get through the evening. Because you have to like be up for so long. And now it's really followed me. Now the sort of in-joke of Diet Coke on sets has really followed me around.
That is how it goes. I take my vice everywhere at like really anything with caffeine.
Yeah, I'm trying. I started drinking coffee when I was like 11. I know it's terribly grown up. I was like, I'm sophisticated, like this tall, please. I'm really trying not to have so much caffeine now. It's tough. It's like harder to quit than smoking, I find.
What's your coffee drink of choice?
When I'm in Australia, I drink cappuccinos. When I'm here, I like a latte or a macchiato.
Okay, that makes sense. I feel like I need something like a little more like milk-based in order to actually enjoy it here. But then you go to a place, like particularly a country that makes better coffee, and then I can drink it just black.
Yeah, totally.
Not here, though. All right, third and final roll on the tower. Can't get a 6. You got to do it again. Don't get another 6. It's a 7,
Okay.
and it's a Yellowjackets one.
All right.
So this one I call Do Something. It's a question that I love asking in general, but it came to mind to add to your list specifically because of the episode 9 Goonies reference. Can you name a movie or a show that inspired you to do something or try something new?
Ooh, I don't know about try something new, but one that I come back to in the same way that I think Van comes back to the Goonies in episode 9 is Gandalf's line in Lord of the Rings, like, so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. That is a real, like, touchstone for me. Yeah, like, philosophically, you know, any time I get overwhelmed in terms of, like, what's happening in the wider world or things outside of my control, it's like, well, it's so do all who live to see such times, you know?
That's such a beautiful answer. When I think about a line that I turn to, I think about Jurassic Park, and mine is just hold on to your butts.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my mantra in life, for better or worse. All right. We got the meat of the conversation now. Before I absolutely interrogate you about the back half of this season, there are a couple things from our last conversation and just in general that I wanted to follow up on and ask about a little more than I did last time. The first thing that I wrote on my list in terms of broader ideas, it was something you brought up last time. You were emphasizing the importance of not holding on too tight to what you think something is going to be in this industry. And I was wondering if you could give me an example of that, a time early on in your career when something didn't didn't pan out the way you imagined, and maybe that was tough to stomach in the moment, but then you realized you were better off for it?
I feel like that happens constantly. And I mean, in this industry in particular, as an actor, like the majority of it is completely out of your control. And I think when I was younger, I did feel like a greater urgency or rigidity around needing to be in the right place or needing to have myself taken care of. And I mean, being not from here, like just from an administrative like perspective, you do have to like have your ducks in a row to like make sure that you're here and ready to work. And I think that mindset followed me creatively for a little bit, where it's like, okay, I need to make sure I'm taken care of, like I'm looking after myself. And I think in the last like couple of years, what I have really learned is to like not have so tight a grip on, or just not to come from a place of fear, I guess, that like to trust that I know what I'm doing and that I know how to carry myself through whatever experience is coming my way, that like I have done it, like I have taken care of myself and gotten to where I need to be.
You're in a very good place right now, and I like it. That's kind of what I want to dig into next. It's another idea that I love bringing up, because I feel like in this business we love calling something someone does a breakout performance. And I feel like from the outsider perspective, it could be completely different than what the person who is experiencing the breakout is actually going through. So I'm going to give you a big two-part question about that idea. Okay. And I'm going to assume you would attribute your breakout to Yellowjackets. But if you want to swap titles, feel free to do it. What is a misconception you had about what it means to break out in film and television? But then also, can you tell me something about Yellowjackets that has really changed something for the better for you?
Totally. I actually think really early on working in film and TV, I like, you know that expression that like an overnight success takes 10 years? I remember hearing that very early on and thinking like, oh, I bet that's very true. And sort of looking around me, I'm like, oh, it literally is. And 10 years is not a figure grabbed from nowhere. Like for some reason that does tend to be pretty much exactly how long it takes most of the time. So I kind of always had a level head on my shoulders about that. And I mean, like my perspective on the work that I do is that I'm always looking to build a body of work that I can be proud of. So even when I was younger, I wasn't necessarily looking for like something to send me to the stratosphere, because it's like, well, I don't, you know, like I'm looking to be like doing this at a sustainable level for the rest of my life. So it doesn't need to be like fireworks right away. And then Yellowjackets is really special because over the course of time that we've been doing this job, I really feel that I have changed a lot and that I have self-actualized a lot, both on a personal level and a professional level. I mean, in between the start and now, like I've become so much more explicit about my non-binary identity publicly. Like my relationship to my body is completely different. And then on a creative level, when we started Yellowjackets, like I don't think it's a secret at this stage that like Van wasn't gonna like be in it forever. So when we started Yellowjackets, I really felt like sort of just like scurried in a corner, not because anyone had put me there, but because I felt like, okay, I'm just gonna do my thing over here. And then hopefully somebody sees it. and if I'm here for a short time, I'm gonna do the best I can. But I think this character's very interesting. So I was sort of getting away with as much as I could. And then now to be in the position that I'm in on the show and like to have carried the character to the place that she's in now, I feel a much more stable sense of like of what I'm able to accomplish like with her and within the story. Like I feel much more secure in myself.
I love how you describe it as like doing your own thing in a corner and hoping people saw what you were doing. And yes. Oh my God, did people say? And I'm grateful you have a team of showrunners at the top there that take the time to, you know, step away from maybe how they visualized the big roadmap and actually see what they have to work with to make it better.
Because they could not have done it. Like at any stage, and I was very aware of that. At any stage, anyone could have said, "Hey, stop improvising," or could you just do the thing that we would like, or people, like they could have looked at what I was doing and been like, "That's all well and good, but she dies later." Like it. So I have always been very grateful to have been received so generously.
Would not have been the same without like your big presence in the characters.
Yeah.
Before I go too far down the Yellowjackets path, there's another thing that I really wanted to ask you because I obsessed with like the wealth of acting techniques out there. And we didn't really get into that at all. So in an effort to, maybe hit 2 layers of it right now, I'll ask you this question. Can you tell me a part of your process that you've been doing since the very beginning, something you've held especially tight to, but then also maybe something you've tried more recently that is brand new?
Totally. Okay, so I come from a theater background. I didn't go to school or anything, but I trained with like a local youth theater company in my hometown and Canberra Youth Theater, where I really like learned how to do basically everything I know how to do. And the artistic director at that time, who was an incredible mentor figure for me, she took us through a lot of like Stanislavski active analysis stuff. Like we did a lot of etudes. I don't know how much this means to anyone, but
you could feel free to explain anything you want to.
Yeah, it's like
people come here to learn about the craft.
Totally. I guess like the central thing that carried over into screen acting for me from a lot of that training was like objective framing. So how it was literally written out was like I want X in order to achieve Y, and I know I'll have achieved Y when Z happens. So your work in a scene with people, it's less internal. It's less like, oh, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? And it's more, what am I trying to do to the person I'm in the scene with? Like, And it can get quite abstract because there's what a character wants and then there's what a character actually needs. But I find that loose framework is very useful no matter what. Like if I'm trying to figure a scene out or figure a character relationship out, what I want from that person or what I want to do to that person, like is always a really good fallback. It's like, in between Van and Thaisa, I don't know what's a good example. I guess in like episode 5 when Van is trying to like make shooting coach okay for Thaisa, where it's like I want Thaisa to feel okay about shooting Ben, like in order to deal with the possibility of like him being a risk for like revealing what we've done. We need him out of the way so that we can be like at peace with what he's seen us do. He's the only judgmental figure left. So I want Thaisa to be okay with it in order to remove Coach as like a figure of guilt. And I know I'll have achieved that when she's not distressed anymore.
Yeah. I know you call it a loose framework, but all I could think of right now is how do you apply that framework to a show that's so heavy with mystery where like sometimes maybe you know what Van wants, but like you don't know what Van needs,
No, but she doesn't either, which is great. And I think Van, within the mystery of the experience all these characters are having, like Van's very reactive, which is like helpful for me as an actor. Like she is always responding to like the most recent piece of information she has. It's like, okay, I will make whatever we're going through okay for anybody. Like I'll make it tolerable. I'll make it survivable. So she's constantly shifting and like bending over backwards in order to make what's happening.
I feel like that idea is going to come back when I start digging into certain moments from like the last episode or 2 that we could talk about. This is only going to be through episode 9, the episode currently available for anyone wondering. We're not going to talk about the finale, but I'm bursting at the seams. I cut off the back half of that question. Can you tell me a technique you've tried for the very first time recently?
Yeah, a technique that I've tried for the first time recently is like not thinking about it that hard, because I'm somebody who I love getting in the weeds, and I love like coming up with as much detail as possible and like really living in it as much as possible. Like it's just fun for me. I really enjoy it. And what I found over the course of this season a lot was a real value in releasing some of that, where it's like, okay, I know everything I want to get across. I know what I'm doing. And now I can stop worrying about it and just like be present and say the words and like not worry, you know?
There's benefit of sticking with a character for so long and the same team of people too, I have to imagine.
Yes.
I feel like Sophie Thatcher told me something similar like months ago when we were discussing the beginnings of season 3. So I get it. I'll use this to kind of transition from that into Yellowjackets because I want to keep talking about techniques. Of everyone in the Yellowjackets ensemble, can you pinpoint someone with a technique that is most similar to your own, where like the second you met, you were immediately in sync? But then I also want an example of a cast member who challenged you to adapt and maybe try something new and for the better.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Lauren and I are really similar. And that was a real pleasure in like being able to talk about Van with her and like be on the wavelength of Van with her, was that like we have like a shared sensibility in terms of reference or like thought. Like we each both really like pulling from other things like plays or pieces of music or archetypes, and I just always really felt that she understood like who Van was to me and like what I was trying to do with her, and yeah, there's just always been like a real shared thread that I felt between the two of us about Van. And then somebody who I learn a lot from watching is Nalise, actually, because she's a weapon. Like she can turn it on and off. I feel like it is so cool watching her, and like I really admire this about her, that like when we're not actually doing it, when it's like okay, cut. She's like, all right, now I'm done doing that, you know, and I'll pick it back up when we're ready to go again. But like now I'm myself for the next little bit, and I think that's really admirable.
I'm glad because she's scary this season, and it just gets scarier and scarier. And then she's so nice in person.
I know.
You're also good at your jobs.
Thank you.
All right. Digging into, before I get too spoilery, actually, there was one question that I didn't get to ask you and Jasmine at the junket that I asked in a couple of other rooms, and I just love details and production design, so I wanted to bring it up here. Is there any particular small detail on that set, maybe in Ty and Van's hut, or just like the general camp that might be small, might not be dead center in a frame, but you appreciated it and it helped fill out their world?
There are a bunch, actually, but the first thing that comes to mind is that Christy, who does my hair on Yellowjackets for episode 5, she completely independently came up with this notion that like Van would be tying her hair back with a thread of an old sleeping wrap of Thais's. So in episode 5, like that's how Van's hair is tied up, and it's a scrap of fabric from Thais's head wrap when Van says "I love you" for the first time in season 2. And I was like, God damn it, that's good. Like, that's excellent.
That touch is incredible. I love stuff like that because it makes it feel also real and thoughtful. I feel like even for people who don't know that detail is there, there's some way it just seeps into your brain and makes everything feel so real and full.
Yeah, and that's creatively when I'm the happiest, is like being able to work on something where everybody in every discipline is able to bring that like level of detail and care to it. It's cool.
Great example right there. All right. This is a little bit of a big question. I hope I articulate it properly. So when you did season 2, Lauren was in the show, but you hadn't seen Lauren's performance. When you do season 3, I assume you had watched season 2, and I was wondering, did anything about what she was doing impact how you tackled your own work in season 3?
Well, when we were filming season 2, one of her first days on set working as Van, we were on sound stages for a lot of season 2 because the snow's not real.
Good.
So we finished in the cabin, the 90s cast finished in the cabin, and then Lauren and Tawny were still working on a different soundstage, and I was like, okay, good night, everybody. And then I snuck onto the soundstage and sat with the writers.
Interesting.
So pretty early on from Lauren's like beginning and working with all of us, I was like, no, I'd love to go and look, actually. I will go and watch. And it's like, it was a head trip. She's so good, and it was always very emotional, like watching her as Van, because it's always been so emotional for me that Van grows up, that she survives. That's always been like really sentimental for me. And then it's very eerie to watch somebody stand the way I stand, not ever having thought about the way that I stand before. It was cool, and it's always been really cool.
All the physicality and the line delivery, it's just so perfect.
Yeah, and I do. Going forward, there were a couple of moments in this season, a couple of scenes in this season where I was like, oh, this is the beginning of Lauren's Van. Like, oh, cool. This, like, I can see where some of these threads are starting for me. And it's really a gift to be given a roadmap like that as an actor, to especially from like such a skilled actor as Lauren. It's like, okay, I know where I'm going, and that's cool too.
Can you give me some specific examples of when that happened?
Yeah, I don't. The scene that I'm primarily thinking of is in the finale.
Okay, you can tell me after.
Yeah, I'll tell you after.
I'm curious.
Yeah,
there's so much good stuff before that we have to talk about here. So I'm gonna do a big old leap to episode 5 specifically. I guess this is a little more of a theory question, but why do you think Van is so absolutely certain to her core, if she even is, that Coach is the one who burned down the cabin? Like, I was thinking about other possibilities if she didn't fully believe that. Like, maybe there's some concern that other Ty actually did it and she's trying to protect her.
I don't think she does, to her core, believe that Ben did it. I don't think Van knows what she believes. In the same way that, like, I don't think to her core Van believes that, like, eating Harvey was the right thing to do. You know, I don't think that Van to her core, like, believes anything. But Van believes what she has to believe in order to survive, like in order to make it out, like make it through the experience they're having. And I think in her mind, she's doing everybody else a favor. Like the monologue in the first episode and the sort of like buffering Ty through shooting Ben, like sort of dramatically fulfill the same purpose to me, which is like setting the story straight for everyone. Like getting everybody on the same page, like, okay, here's what's going on. Here's how we all feel about it, and it's going to be fine, okay? Because any alternative possibility would be life-shattering.
So throughout this season, do you think the number one thing that is guiding her compass is the itch to survive?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I have like my own like much less drastic like real-world experience of this, and I think a lot of people do, which is when you're in the middle of like a really traumatic situation, you have blinders on. Like you are not yourself and you're not behaving as you would normally behave. You do and think and say and believe whatever you have to tell yourself in order to make it out the other side. And that's a very powerful survival drive that I actually think is admirable. You know, that I think it's difficult, and I think like it causes a lot of pain and it's hard. But like without that kind of drive, I don't know that Van would have made it out.
I have so many follow-up questions. One of the first things that I thought about when you were explaining all that is comparing things like setting the story straight at the beginning and with Ty to kind of nudge her forward down that path with the conversation that you have in, I can't say it. I was about to jump to episode 10. This is driving me nuts.
I know.
Now I'm busy sitting here thinking, like, do we just release this the next week?
This is great because it actually like allows me to draw a clear line of something that I've always thought about Van, which is that there's the narrativizing that she does, like for herself, for Travis trying to convince him to eat Harvey, like with the monologue for everybody, trying to get Taissa to shoot Ben, being like, I am going to make sure that we have a group theory about this that makes it survivable for everyone. And that is completely upended by the arrival of the scientists. Like that, it completely changes everything. And the line that Van has of, we are going home, that's the first time that's occurred to her. Like that, oh my God, I've been telling myself the wrong story about this the whole time. Oh fuck, like we're going home. Okay, that's different. That is a completely different story to the one that I've been telling myself and telling everybody else. So now what? You know, now how do I live with what we've done out here? Like what I've done, what I've told everybody, what I've told myself about it. Now it's intolerable. Like now it's intolerable to stay. It's intolerable to confront or think about. That's how you get the adjustment from like, let your brother save you to we ate a fucking kid. Is like, holy fuck, we're going home.
My original version of the compass question was what's guiding her compass the most before they arrive and then after. Because like you see a total shift in the way that you carry yourself in that role. And the way she speaks. Like there's something so much like softer and more vulnerable after there's so many things that you say that just like crushed my heart in a way that I guess I never realized that character would be so like susceptible to those emotions anymore.
Totally. And she's not, so long as she's able to like tell herself the story of like the wilderness in this place and what's required of her. Because at the beginning of the season, Van is like, well, we live here and we'll die here and we have to make that okay in the meantime, you know, and then suddenly grown-ups arrive into camp and then she's like, wait, I'm a teenager and we're going home and we've done a lot of terrible shit. I'm just noticing for the first time, you know?
So if Hannah and them had never shown up, do you think that I guess what would have happened is they would have continued on this same course and basically lived out their days in the wilderness as is?
Totally. And I mean, right before they arrive, like Van and Thaisa have an exchange where Van is like, we're going to have to spend another winter out here. And before the scientists arrive, Van's driving engine is like, what are the problems that are going to come our way? Okay, that's going to be an issue. How am I going to make that survivable? Like, all right, what do I need to construct around me in order to make that fine? And then the scientists arrive and she's like, wait, it's not fine at all.
Yeah.
It's not fine at all. Everything's terrible.
What was your reaction when you read that particular script and realized that that line was attributed to Van, of all people? I don't know why. In that moment, I think it's such a good, like, button for the end of an episode, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't expecting that line to come from you first.
Totally. And I mean, like, when I read it, I was like, oh, great. I get it. Like, I know exactly, like, the switch that I'm going to, like, carry Van through making for the rest of the season. What I thought was beautiful about it is I'm like, oh, I don't think other people are going to expect that out of Van. And as like as the rest of the script started coming in, it's like by the time we get to the finale, Van's out. Van's out. Like, and I knew, I mean, with the introduction of like Van in the present, Lauren's Van is out. She's like, I don't want anything to do with any of this. So I knew that would be coming for me at some point, like an adjustment from this is all I believe to get away from me. Like, okay, that at some point is going to happen. I didn't expect it to happen this soon or this dramatically, but it makes complete sense to me that it would happen that quickly and dramatically once the possibility of going home is like introduced.
I got so many other lines that I want to hit. So we did the going home one. I think the other one that I'll just jump to really quickly is, I think this happens. When do they? Oh no, actually, it happens earlier on when Thaisa and Van are in the tent and they're trying to use the sat phone. And the first thing Van says is, "I have to call my mom."
Yeah. Last
thing in the world I thought she was going to say in that moment.
Me too. And I have been thinking about Van and her mom since we shot the pilot. Like Van slapping her mom awake was like a real like North Star for me in terms of her character like development in the early stages of the show, where I was like, well, what's one of the things I know about this person? It's like that her home life is like unstable and she's comfortable with violence, you know, and she doesn't have support. And like one of the things that Bart told me in season 1 was like, well, Van's very Al-Anon, and I was like, got it. So I've been thinking about Van and her mum for a really long time. And I always kind of like hoped that like we would come back around to like addressing Van's home environment and what that means for like how that explains some of the way that she behaves with everybody the rest of the time. And this was a really beautiful hint of it. What I really appreciated about it was that like, the audience knows what Van's mum is like. The others don't necessarily. I don't think Van talks about her mum, but the notion of I'm going to try my mum, it's a moment, and I think there are a lot of moments like this in season 3, that it's a moment that underscores how young they are, like how young everybody is, you know? And I think that was really important, that like, yeah, Van knows who her mom is, but she's a kid and like she's lost and she doesn't have anybody else to try. You know?
Do that so well in the back half of this. I feel like a lot of that came for me through your performance in particular. And then there's one moment where it's Sophie Thatcher out in the woods as the snow's about to fall.
Yeah.
And oh, my heart just crumbled into a million pieces, especially because that particular character is not one we see break down very often. And
she's been through the ringer this season. My God.
A lot. There's
Awful.
a lot. I love how I couldn't figure out where that one came from. That would have been 6 because it's after they arrive.
Yes.
Now we're up to 7. Oh, wait, no, I'm wrong. The hikers arrive in 7.
They arrive at the end of 6.
They arrive at the end. They arrive at the end of 6, so into 7. So 7's where they do the phone call. Yes. I got there eventually with your help. Thank you. So later on is when we get one of the first scenes with you and Lauren. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll probably ask this question twice as it pertains to the episode 7 scene and also the episode 9 scenes. Yeah. And actually, this was something that I had asked, I believe I asked Courtney this last season, because it does tell us a lot about these kinds of scenes. When you're doing a scene with Lauren, how are you playing that version of Van? Is that version of Van I'm seeing your Van, or is it more of like a dream Van that Lauren is manifesting?
Totally. Well, they're very different. The 7 scene and the 9 scenes, I think, are quite different. And the scenes between Lauren and I are so important to me. They're such like a special part of this season. There was something that we asked for, actually. We were like, just while we have the opportunity, would it maybe be interesting, please? And I think actually the one in 7 was always planned, which I didn't realize until later. But the 9 ones, like we'd asked, like if there was an opportunity for us to work together, like as they were figuring out how the story was going to go.
Like the beginning ones in the hospital.
Yeah. So thematically, to me, how I understood them is that the scene in 7 is a nightmare, which is why like Van sees herself as sort of like a more like I in that scene am much more sort of distant and like not that kind and not that friendly. Like that is the nightmare of somebody in hospital who knows she's dying and is scared, and feels like this horrible experience like coming up to crash onto her again. And then 9, the scenes in 9, I really understood those as like Van's inner child, like ushering her through the experience of dying. And as an actor, and then also like as myself, like how I felt about looking after Van through this season, like I was just like that's how it felt. It was like I need to look after her, and like as young Van in those scenes, I felt for Van in the present like I need to look after her. And then like from on a meta level, like I think literally that is Lauren's Van imagining younger Van. Like I don't think that younger Van is necessarily literally in those scenes. I think it's like an imagining of her. But I did imagine younger Van as like a part of her in those scenes that is like stepping up to make sure she's okay as she's dying. And like as Liv, I wanted to make sure Van was okay over the course of this season, as I knew we were going to be saying goodbye to her. And then as young Van in those scenes, I want to make sure that the older Van's okay. I want to make sure she's okay. And I'm proud of her and I love her and I think she's cool. And it's like, it truly is like yourself as a teenager visiting you as an adult. And people ask me that all the time, like, oh, what would you say to yourself when you were younger if you could say anything? And it's always a really emotional question. So those scenes, I think, were an opportunity to play out a dynamic like that. And what is cool is that, like, Lauren's Van is not comfortable with Van in the wilderness. Like, that is a part of herself that she, I think, feels a great deal of shame about and, like, potential resentment of. And she's not integrated or, like, comfortable with what she's done or who she was then. But, like, young Van adores Van in the present. Like, because you made it. You made it out. And I'm going to look after you now.
I mean, we don't want to go through this exact situation, but isn't that the most beautiful thing as you grow up, to think that your younger self would look at you now and have those kinds of feelings?
Exactly, yeah.
I don't want to get too much into the tail end of episode 9, but I feel like this kind of gets bunched up with that. What are some of your biggest burning questions for the showrunners when it comes to shooting the plane material at the end, just in terms of, again, how to play your version of the character and what it might feel like to be in that environment? Because as a viewer, at least, like, we still don't quite know what that is.
Well, they gave me a real gift in the writing of that scene, which is that, like, young Van just gets to talk to Van in the present, like, about how proud she is of her. You know, like there is a real sense of apology in that scene where it's like, yeah, I did send you in there and I did know you were going to die. But, and I remember I asked if I could add that in the scene where Lauren says, oh, you said I was going to be some kind of hero. And then my van says, you saved them. Like that, the gift of that scene to me is like, I didn't feel caught up in the dream logic of like what the plane is, or like where this part of Van is coming from, or like what this liminal space means. Like that all sort of really fell away for me. Or it's like the important piece of this is like is to look after her, you know, and say sorry and be sorry, but to make sure she knows that she did a great job, you know.
That's your job. It's our job to be like nerds about the rules and trying to figure all this out. And
and it's just like that scene. I just felt from young Van to present day Van like so much love. Like it just is like, man, Van Palmer, you mean the world to me. Like that. I just remember thinking that. So that was more on my mind. The interplay like between these two parts of that person. What the plane literally means, I couldn't tell you at all.
Do you have a theory? I know you don't. I'll preface by saying I know you don't know. Mm-hmm. Or at least I think you don't know.
What do I think the plane is? Well, I'm not sure, but I mean, I have this image, how I imagine time visually is like as a spiral that goes up, and like say that's January. The next January is above it here, and then the next January is above it here. So when I look back on the past, I sort of see it as like stacking, like I'm like looking through like a pneumatic tube almost at like different moments of my life overlapping. And I think there's a reading of the plane that is that, oh, the wilderness is always going to come back for them. I don't think that's it personally. I think that it is like time stacking underneath them. And the Yellowjackets as adults are so fragmented. They're not able to like integrate the experience they had with the people they are now. They're like constantly running away from it and in denial of it. And I mean, there are literal mentions in this season of them not really being able to remember clearly what happened. But I think the plane is like a visual indicator of like integration, like those parts of each of those people literally like meeting and uniting.
What a fascinating visual.
Yeah.
So you view the show that way, and you also think in general that way?
I do, yeah.
Interesting. I feel like that's going to start crossing my mind now.
It's cool. It's like, it's very sentimental, but yeah, it's nice.
I feel like I need to think on it a little more, but the second you said it, I'm like, oh, like there's something, I don't know, there's something that feels like standing on the things that you've learned to go up and up, and that it's okay to like dip back and remember and reprocess.
Totally.
I like that. Before I dig into episode 9 even more, there's one particular conversation in episode 8 that I wanted to go back to. It's the conversation between Van and Thaisa about what happens when they go home.
Oh, sure.
At what point in the show, or maybe even who they are before we meet them in the show, do you think they diverged in that respect? Like, what is sending each of them down two completely different paths with how they're processing that?
The possibility of going back?
Yeah.
Well, the thing that fascinates me the most about that exchange is, like, Thaisa's concern with what people will think of the two of them. Because I've always thought that, like, that's probably a really big part of how they separate is like their different levels of willingness to be out, their different levels of comfort with being out in the late 90s, which is understandable. And that's something that we've always talked about. It's something that Lauren and I talked about when she first joined the show is like, okay, what do you think the experience was of this like person who was able to be like out and in love and like front facing and like integrated and like these two people are together and it's not a problem. And then you get back and like, oh, your life is saved, but it's 1998 in New Jersey and you become tabloid fodder immediately, you know, like, okay, well, that's not going to go great, is it? And Thaisa is, I mean, one of the things that's so fascinating about Thaisa as a character is like her relationship to image. I mean, aside from the fact that like she literally has like a self-image split, you know, like when we meet her, she's a politician. She's like, she's had to deal with God knows how much like respectability politics over the course of her life. So my conceptualization of it is that like Van is out. I don't know that Van is somebody who was ever able to not be. She's like, well, I'm gay. I think that's pretty obvious to everyone, you know. But what is alluded to in this season is that like Van and Taissa were seeing each other, but it was a secret before they crashed. And the prospect of being together when they get back is something that makes Taissa nervous. And Van doesn't want to deal with that, you know, where it's like, what are you talking about? Why are you talking about that? And then like there's an exchange that Lauren and Tawny have this season, which I loved. You know, where Van literally says, I mean, it's like, well, the funny thing is you ended up gay anyway and married to a woman who you're still married to. Like, okay, so this is a big recurring deal for these two people. And I got to be honest, I'm excited about that because I think that's very real and it's interesting. And it is like such a rich, fascinating, truthful, like gay experience. Mm-hmm. And, you know, maybe that's messed up to say, but I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Now I'm even more curious about when they're actually going to get rescued because, you know, I want some time in the in-between to explore things like that.
Yeah.
We shall see.
We'll see.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed. This is more of a theory question, but I jotted this line down too. There's one point in that conversation, I believe, or maybe it's the next one, where Taissa warns Van, this place will follow us for the rest of our lives. And Van brushes that off, too.
Yeah, like, no, it won't.
This actually might be more of a Lauren question, but all grown up, do you think she wishes that she had put more stock in that warning?
Well, and I mean, this is like another example of this show being like a fascinating circular narrative that like, I think Lauren's Van is one of the most haunted by what happened. I mean, the rest of them have made, to varying degrees, some effort to move on with their lives. And Van, like, went off on her own, went off the grid, and, like, buried herself in 90s paraphernalia, you know? Like, and is, like, so deeply uncomfortable and so openly uncomfortable with everything that happened to them. The rest of them, again, to varying degrees, like, have their own systems of repression that are largely to do with living a life that is different. And Van's life is not different. She's much more stuck.
My heart just shatters in a million pieces.
Not good.
I got one more line from that episode that I wrote down that I'm curious what Van's answer would be to. It's the question that that Melissa asks Sean. It's one of my favorite performance beats of Jenna's, including another one that I want to ask you about. Please, first, it's this one. She asks, do you know what the first thing you're going to do when you get back is, what you're most excited about? And my God, that reply from Jenna as Melissa is just like so incredibly pure and beautiful and then heartbreaking with how Shauna like reacts or doesn't react to it. Mm-hmm. What do you think Van's answer would be in that moment?
What she's looking forward to. I don't think she has one ready to go of what she's looking forward to. Because again, like she's so reactive. It's so immediate. And even as they're getting ready and packing, it's so what's in front of them right now. It's not like, oh, I can't wait to XYZ. It's like, get a bag and put some shit in it. Like what's in front of us? What do we need to do to get out? Her field of vision is quite small. In a way that I think like sets her up to survive a lot of horrible shit, but like limits her imagination.
It's
maybe.
So crazy how that way of looking at it is the polar opposite of Melissa, and then what it all comes to.
Yeah.
Before I touch on that part of it, though, I did want to ask you about watching Jenna and Sophie do that fight. Like Sophie as Shauna has so many chilling moments in that show. Mm-hmm. There's something about that particular conversation and the way that Jenna delivers the line, like, why can't you just be nice? And then at the end, seeing Van run over to comfort her. I don't know. That whole moment just, like, again, shattered my heart for this whole group of people.
Well, Jenna and I came up with that on the day, actually. Yeah.
Wait, which part of it?
Well, the Jesus under my breath was just something I said that they kept. But then, like, Van going over to her at the end, Jenna and I were talking about it, and I was like, would you mind if I came over to you? And she was like, no, do it. Because for the two of us, I mean, there's only so much time in the show, and like, there's so many people, like and they have to be like careful and particular about like what moments stay in our scene. What Jenna and I have felt about Melissa and Van is that, like, Melissa's a JV player, like Van's a tiny bit older, like they're both sort of like baby butch, like mask-leaning young lesbians out in the wilderness. So it started as kind of a running bit between the two of us that, like, oh, Melissa probably thinks Van is really cool, and then Van is like, what is happening over there, like with Melissa and Shauna's relationship. So the two of us have talked about that a lot, and then like the reveal of Hillary as adult Melissa, and then what happens between adult Melissa and adult Van. Jenna has always said, she's like, well, my Melissa would never do that to your Van, and that's exciting to me because it's like, okay, so now the two of us get to play the difference between the sort of like traumatized baby gay identification to like incredible separation and violence later that almost has a kind of like competitive angle, where it's like, you're not that kind of person, but I am, you know, like, so I'm excited about that. Oh. But so that moment, the sort of like comforting her, it was maybe a little bit evil of us, but Jenna and I were like, no, that's gonna make what happens later worse if we do this. So let's do it.
It is so true. Like everything about how adult Van dies caught me off guard. But one particular like piece of connective tissue that I held especially tight to was the fact that your Van goes over and does that for her in the moment, and then in the present day material, she even says like, you were always, I don't remember the exact words, but like one of the better ones, one of the kinder ones.
Yeah. So that setup is something that Jenna and I are really interested in playing with more as we go forward.
I want to see that more. Mm-hmm. I'm so sad. The journey's over for adult Van. I know. I'll get into that now. When something like that happens in a season of television, is it a situation where you are given the heads up early on in the season, or is it more of a matter of when you are given the episode 9 script, that's when you're being told the information?
No, they told me earlier than that. I can't imagine they told me earlier. And so I found out like pretty early on in filming, I think like while we were filming episode 2 or something, I was told about it. And I mean, like, to be candid, like I was very like professional and like level-headed and like, oh, it's okay, and I have some questions about that, and like, okay, like, so very level-headed and even. And then I went home and bawled my eyes out. You know, I was so sad. I was so sad. And like it was fascinating. I really underwent like a sort of stages of grief process with it over the course of filming. Like it was very personal and like very it caught me off guard in how like intense of a journey it was for me to sort of like think about and confront and then be like, okay, let's talk about how that's gonna happen. You know, I felt and have always felt such a degree of like protectiveness over Van. Not that I need to protect Van from anything, because like Van's in the show and the showrunners like run the show, and like that's good. But what I mean is that like I'm really attached to her, and like I care about her so much, and I care about the show so much. So hearing that that's the direction we were going to go in, I was like, all right, okay, can I say some things that I want to avoid? And they were like, yes. And then I did. And they were like, don't worry about that. I was like, okay, cool, great.
What were some of the things?
I didn't want it to be an accident. I didn't want it to be like a rug pull or in the service of somebody else's narrative, which by the way, the showrunners were like, of course not. I'm like, yeah, no, it's great. Just saying it out loud. Thank you so much. 'Cause the thing that I was thinking about the most, that they were also thinking about, is Van's relationship to death is kind of accidentally very specific. Like in the decision to keep me on, there's like a creation of this pattern where Van like avoids death a bunch of times. So in like this beautiful like meta-narrative way, you have this character whose relationship to death is like really particular. So if and when she dies, if her death is part of the narrative, then it was important to me that we be saying something about her relationship to death. Like the death has to be as specific as that relationship. It has to be saying something about that relationship. So that was something that was on my mind and on their minds as we were sort of headed towards the end of the season.
I like that you speak up and ask questions about those things. I feel like that's a big part of the reason why the show is so strong. Obviously, you have a wonderful team at the helm, and they know what they're doing. Yeah. But I also really think that Yellowjackets gets its special spark from the fact that all of you really care. And you don't just care about the thing as like work. Like, I want to do well. You want to make sure that you take care of your characters and their narratives. And it pays off big time.
Yeah. And I got to say, they were like very generous with me and like in like hearing me out and just like letting me kind of say my piece, I suppose, which is like I just want to make sure it's like, yeah, we've got it. Don't worry. I'm like, okay, great, thank you.
So you're talking about going through the stages of grief with this whole scenario earlier. Do you remember the moment in that grieving process where you found peace, where you're like, this will be okay for like me personally as the actor working on the show, but also narratively?
Oh, it was so hard. I mean, like, so much of this is so meta in ways that like I will be thinking about for like the next decade of my life easily. Like I don't know that I'll make sense of it until a long time from now. But in playing the scene out on the airplane with Lauren and I, like there's me in character as young Van, like taking care of Van in the present. And then I really felt just as myself, like taking care of Van and saying goodbye to her, you know? So that was very real. Like I didn't have to think about what kind of acting I was doing much that day, to be honest. Like, so that was like a huge part of it emotionally for me, was like in filming that scene and in finishing it and thinking like, okay, I did my best there. Like I got her through it. Her being like Van Palmer, like I got Van Palmer through it. Tried to, you know?
Oh, it's a beautiful moment. I learned nothing from these interviews. I never bring tissues. I always say I should bring tissues. I feel like Tawny started to cry and I didn't have any tissues, just sitting there the entire time. Do you need a tissue?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
It really, like, again, all of the heart that you put into it is very, very visible in the finished product, and it makes it so incredibly strong. The other question with all of this that had crossed my mind is, did you, Sophie, and Courtney ever sit down and have like a support group about 90s actors who are losing their present-day counterpart?
Oh, we have like joked with each other about it, frankly. Yeah, like it's in sort of like a delightfully morbid way. There sort of is a bit of a camaraderie about it, I will say, and a sense of like carrying the characters forward. I mean, like Lauren has always said this really beautiful thing about season 3, where it's like she's always said to me like, I'm just giving her back to you. Like, that's all. I'm just giving her back to you. So I think for the three of us, there is a sense of like, okay, now it's our job to look after these people.
Just giving her back to you.
I know.
I'm not going to stop thinking about that now. I love how we opened the door to episode 10 and I didn't write down any questions about that, but I still got a couple here. We do have to end with the same old question we always end the show on. You've answered this before, but I think it's important to answer it again and again and again.
Okay.
I want to know something you accomplished making season 3 of Yellowjackets that you know you're always going to look back on and say, you know what, I'm really proud of what I did there.
I mean, I always want to be careful in like, I want to be careful of the risk of like overstating my involvement or my influence, but I mean, the journey that I have been on with this character and that this character's been on in the show, losing Lauren's half of Van does feel like a closing of a circle of one kind, or like it does feel like the ending of something, like the ending of a chapter or of like a through line. And so what I think is just the journey that this character's been on and that I've been on with her. Because like I remember starting on this show and knowing that I was a guest actor, but just like really feeling that this character was special, that that characters like her don't come around every day, and that if I played my cards right, I think other people would be able to see it as well. And to have that be true and to be rewarded and then to be kept on is one thing. And then I remember like being at the first GLAAD Awards we all ever went to and like sitting with Ashley Lyle and her just turning to me and saying, "We're doing adult Van, by the way." Because Van surviving, Van like not only staying on the show, but staying on the show to the present day, like the fact that Van grows up, I just always felt that as such a victory, like professionally and personally, and I will be proud of that forever, you know?
You should be. And I'll be thankful for that forever. Truly, like the pairing of the two of you has been one of my absolute favorite things on this show. So good together, such a powerful storyline. I cannot congratulate you enough. And also because I think we only said it once. Congratulations on For Worse. The last time we saw each other was at South by Southwest.
Yeah.
Said I wanted to bring it up to manifest good things for that movie because
I really would like that.
A wonderful film made by a wonderful group of people. So I will say congratulations on everything you've accomplished on Yellowjackets Season 3 and For Worse and for everything coming your way in the future.
Thank
you know
you.
You'll be back on Forces soon.
Hell yeah.
Third time around. It's going to happen soon.
Can't wait.